Hi there, John Wilkinson here, History Made Easier. You IGCSE students have three big topics that look at the Cold War. So it seems to me that you want a really solid understanding of just what the Cold War was. I hope this little video helps you in that. So here's a picture of the Berlin Wall as we begin our explanation of just what the Cold War was. And above all else, above everything else, the Cold War was an ideological war. That means a war of ideas. Whether liberal democracy with free multi-party elections, a free privately owned media and freedom of speech actually provided governments that govern for the people, or whether it's all a cover for the wealthy to serve their own interests first and the interests of the rest of us only when possible or when it has to. Or whether communism and one-party rule, because of its focus on equality for all and so serving everyone's interests, does the job better? Or does it lead to a totalitarian, controlling government that when faced with any measure of opposition sets out to eradicate it? Even freedom is contested. Does it mean freedom from unnecessary government interference? Freedom to take control of our own lives, which would entail individual responsibility and an acceptance of inequality? Or is freedom best secured by collective action, by everyone cooperating so that no one is left in need, even when this will entail giving up individual gains for the good of community as a whole? And as for capitalism versus communism, well, Western economies are run on the capitalist model, a free market economy in which privately owned companies face some regulations, for example, health and safety requirements, and they pay taxes, but otherwise they're mostly free to run their businesses as they see fit, driven by profit, and so what their consumers will buy at the price they will pay. And this stands as far apart from communism as seems possible. For communism is based on a command economy, producing what the government commands through state-owned concerns, and so, in theory at least, ensuring a sharing of wealth. So, the Cold War as an ideological war. But it was also a propaganda war. And this meant it was a war of words. Freedom versus tyranny, or exploitation, not aid, the Soviet response to Marshall Aid. It was a period of profound mistrust in which at times America's foreign policy couldn't see beyond the Cold War. It was a war that set out to show which side was best, damaging each other's reputation wherever they could, and trying to win friends wherever they could. Blatant propaganda like the Voice of America, the radio station that broadcast pro-American programs into Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union itself, or Comintern that sought to direct the activities of communist parties around the world in the direction that best suited the Soviet Union. It was played out in the race for gold medals, in the Olympic Games, drugs in sport can be dated back to this time. And in the boycott of each other's games, America boycotted Moscow in 1980, and the Soviet Union boycotted Los Angeles in 1984. America's boycott of the 1980 Moscow Olympics was in protest to the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan. And the Soviet Union's retaliation, their boycott of the 1984 Los Angeles Games, was ostensibly because they were concerned about their athletes' safety. But really, it was a matter of revenge. Chess became part of the Cold War when in 1972 the World Championship pitted the American Bobby Fischer against the Russian Boris Spassky. The Russians had monopolized the title since 1948, and this was America's chance to show that their brains were better than Russian brains. The race to land the first man on the moon was a propaganda race. It helped develop rocket technology as well, but it was really a propaganda coup for the Americans. And even international aid became a tool to gain influence. This was the first application of what we came to call soft power. We saw it first in Europe in 1948 with Marshall Aid, and we saw it in the way the Soviet Union rushed to support Cuba following its fallout with America in the 50s. But we saw it in tens of thousands of projects, helping farmers, helping build up infrastructures such as dams, hospitals, building sports stadiums, all sorts of stuff, all over the world. The propaganda war. But it was also a war of personalities. We had Winston Churchill, Harry Truman, Joseph Stalin fighting it out at Yalta and at Potsdam. We had Kennedy and Khrushchev fighting it out over the Cuban Missile Crisis. And we have Mao and Ho Chi Minh rising to power in Asia. And towards the end of the Cold War, Brezhnev, Gorbachev and Reagan. Great personalities. But it was also a war of crises. And you guys will study these crises. The Berlin blockade, the Hungarian crisis, the Berlin Wall, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Prague Spring, solidarity in Poland, and the final crisis of the Cold War, Gorbachev's attempt to restructure communism and reposition the Soviet Union. And it was also a time when conflicts did arise. And again, you look at these conflicts, Korea, the Cuban Missile Crisis, Vietnam. But there were also a host of conflicts in Africa, in Central and South America, and the Middle East that you don't study particularly, but they're there as part of the context to the Cold War that you study. But it was also about territory. And here I give an analogy of dropping a stone into the still waters of a pond. And where the stone falls, we see Berlin. And then as the ripples spread out, we have Germany, we have Europe, we have the rest of the world, and finally we have space. Berlin was always at the centre of the Cold War, where it started with the Berlin blockade, where it would have its own crises like the Berlin Wall, and where it would end with the collapse of the wall, climbed on and hacked to pieces by ordinary Berliners. Germany, like Berlin, divided between East and West. West Germany, or the Federal Republic of Germany, would be a part of NATO. East Germany, or the German Democratic Republic, a part of the Warsaw Pact. And then Europe itself divided on the same lines by Churchill's Iron Curtain. The likes of France, Italy or Britain on one side, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Poland on the other. And then we have the rest of the world, Asia, Africa, Central and South America, the Middle East, even the Arctic and Antarctic got involved in the Cold War. There were wars here, as we've looked at, in which American troops and others fought. We've looked at Korea and Vietnam, but there were Russian troops fought in Afghanistan. These were all really civil wars, but there were also proxy wars where countries fought with help from each side of the Cold War, help from America, help from the Soviet Union or from China. For example, Israel and Egypt in the Middle East, or in other bitter civil wars, the Congo and Angola in Africa, Guatemala or Chile in Central and South America. There was hardly a part of the world left unaffected. And then we have space. Here, I think the Cold War took on its most frightening form in the nuclear arms race. Nuclear and hydrogen bombs, short range, intermediate range, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and again that race to the moon. But the Cold War was always about power. Power blocks in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Asia, Central and South America again. And America, as well as the Soviet Union, sought to assert control over their own blocks in those regions. Economic power, we see it with the aid. This is the essence of soft power. Soft power is that trade deals are linked to military pacts or alliances, allowing a strategic military base to be built. I'll give you trade, you give me this. I'll give you aid, you give me this. Military power, the arms race, conventional and nuclear, NATO and the Warsaw Pact. That is the Cold War. So that's my explanation of just what the Cold War was. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you'll find it useful. You've got 3 really interesting topics on the Cold War, so good luck with that. But for me, for now, as always, I thank you for listening. And I remind you, don't forget to check out my History Made Easier website. There's some interesting stuff on the Cold War there for you. Cheers.